I told you a little bit ago, we were working on a project, me and my buddy Billy, Kelton Brady. We finally got it ready to go. You might have saw the television show last week. We had Aaron McMullen and Crystal Quaid on. Now we are joined by one of the biggest power brokers in Missouri politics, Susan Klein with Missouri Right to Life. Thank you so much for making the time to join us.
Thank you, Scott. I'm glad to be here with you. We've tried to work this out several times, and I'm glad it happened today.
I know. I get to see you setting up in the Senate is normally when I get to run into you.
Right.
So getting seen in the summertime is kind of nice.
Right. We have a lot of good discussions up there in the Senate.
But we have plenty of time. And we usually, I reckon, have the most interesting discussions of anybody having discussions when we're sitting up there. Because we do get to hear a lot of very boring discussions.
Well, the Senate debates.
They should just hand us a microphone and we could do an hour, and that'd probably be the best hour.
We can decide real quick, what we would like for them to do.
Yeah, we have it all figured out up there in the gallery. But there's big news today. When people ask me this question, it is funny because you have some Republicans that get pissy about it. You have some Democrats certainly do. I think the biggest endorsement in this state is the Missouri Right to Life endorsement. And you made an endorsement in the governor's race. I think you got the paper right there.
We did. The Missouri Right to Life PAC is, it's a group of people who are made up of people from across the state.
Mm-hmm.
And it is important that they sit down, they talk. Obviously, we follow.
Well, don't bury the headline. Tell folks who you endorsed.
Missouri Right to Life PAC did a single endorsement of Jay Ashcroft for governor for the August primary, August 6, 2024.
Can I have the release there?
You can.
I've seen this. I think we're publishing an op-ed from Jay today about something else. So obviously, you have three folks that I think your average Missourian would consider to be pro-life. You have Lieutenant Governor Kehoe, you have Senator Bill Eigel, and you have Secretary of State Ashcroft. My gut tells me this was a tough decision to make. Not that it was tough to say Jay Ashcroft's pro-life would be a pro-life governor, but may have been a little tough because some of the old friendships. And I mean, you've had so much success. I mean, there's no group. I mean, the trial attorneys have turned things around from a matter of being attacked every session to now just maybe nobody going after him. You've actually totally rewritten the law about abortion in this state. And now it's moved into a lot of budgetary issues. It had to be kind of tough because a lot of the horses you've rode to get there are in this race.
Well, it was a tough race in several ways.
Yeah.
Obviously, there are some good candidates in the race. We have some issues that we will talk about. But as we look at the announcement by the Democrats, and that they're obviously going to build their platform on reproductive rights, which is, abortion on demand at any stage of development without any accountability. So when we look at that, and we know that the 2024 elections, I know everybody always says these are the most important elections of our lifetime. And I think we've ultimately come to that place again. The 2024 elections is huge in Missouri. Obviously, you've got from president, you've got statewide seats, you've got congressional seats, U.S. Senate seat, House and Senate seats. And we just needed to, kind of coalesce from the very beginning of this cycle, the pro-life people across the state of Missouri. We need to get behind one candidate. We need to fight against the Democrat pro-abortion platform. And as we looked at our candidates, who would that be? And so it was a tough decision, but it was something that we feel very strongly about, and we're going to maintain this position through. And obviously, we'll talk about Jay's positives are that he has been very vocal in protecting life, and is
kind of got a family tradition of that.
He does, yeah. A great dad and a great name recognition. But Jay is his own person too. I mean, he's really worked to take in 2019, whenever he dealt with the initiative petition issue, and looking at the Constitution, what our Constitution allowed. He protected the unborn babies and the moms, as a single person, as a single person in a statewide seat at that time. Now, some of the issues at hand that our PAC looked at was the funding of Planned Parenthood. Are we still funding Planned Parenthood? And who's had the opportunity to have a say-so in that? And obviously that has been Senator Eigel and Lieutenant Governor Kehoe. We know that they've been strong supporters of life, but there are some issues that come with those too. One is that, Senator Eigel has been a great spokesperson on the floor of the Senate. He has, been with the conservative caucus, so that's been a good thing. But there's still some votes whenever we were talking about the FRA. And that if you feel
is it hard to call Bill Eigel? Because I assume you and Bill Eigel talk throughout session. I don't know how much after about, we'd call it back home hogs, dogs, and logs, but I guess it's a tough call to make it. You have to call and say, we're going to endorse somebody else for your race.
It is tough. But once again, I believe that as we look at Missouri and moving forward and the attacks that are going to be coming our way as we move into the 2024 election cycle, I think that, sometimes we make the tough calls. And if we can bring and pull our pro-life voters together, obviously we're going to deal with initiative petitions, pro-abortion initiative petitions as it works through the lawsuit. We're going to be dealing with a presidential candidate. We need a governor that is going to go out and speak out on all these tough issues. So as we looked at the candidates, there is one that we could not endorse when we're looking at the top of the top of the statewide in the state of Missouri, and the PAC could not endorse Kehoe for this race. Because of his support of funding for human cloning embryonic stem cell research and those battles in the past. I'll give a specific date in June 25th of 2021, when we were working on the FRA battle. We were trying to defund Planned Parenthood and put defund Planned Parenthood language in statute. The choice was made by Lieutenant Governor to call on a pro-abortion senator instead of a pro-life senator. So that was, and we were in the gallery at that point. So that was one of the considerations.
But can you not? I mean, a senator's going to get. Does it matter the order?
It doesn't matter the order. It does matter if you basically.
Any senator can get called on. You can't move forward without unanimous consent, right? So.
Yeah, exactly. But if we're a pro-life state, then and we're wanting pro-life discussions out there rather than pro-abortion discussions on the Senate floor. Then you call on a pro-life senator who actually was asking to be recognized first. So that was one of the conversations in the PAC.
The reasons why this state has, I don't think it's ever had a pro-choice majority, but you had certainly the leadership of the Democrat Party had became pro-choice, but that respect of the Senate, you've made a lot of coverage in my professional career. I guess I'm getting old now, but. I mean, it's radically reformed abortion policy in the state of Missouri, but you didn't have as far to go because that state Senate was a place that even the pro-life Republicans who may have been in the minority, you couldn't roll them. Protecting that's a good thing, right?
Protecting the integrity of the Senate is a good thing. Obviously, if you're talking about life issues, there are times that we would love to have the previous question called. Because babies are at risk of being killed.
I want to get into this, but I want to come back to that previous question. If right now you have the law as you'd like it, right?
We have the trigger law in place, and that is a good thing. Obviously, the Attorney General has looked at people who are trying to ship abortion drugs into the state of Missouri.
But you have this trigger law, landmark piece of legislation. It's got to be, when you look back on your career, one of the biggest accomplishments you've had, right? So if you at some point you'll leave this position, you're going to do other things in life. Somebody else will have it, and you could sit back and realize whoever takes your position as the leading advocate for the pro-life cause in the state, you don't know what the future holds. There are some folks that can look at trends and say, well, you know what? Maybe there won't be a pro-choice majority, but there'll probably be a few more pro-choice members of the legislature. If there was support to even not overturn the legislation you wrote, but amend it, weaken it, I would think in this state that previous question would protect your law.
It would protect us, but there are times that it actually would give us the ability to move forward. One of the things that was stripped off of the bill was protection of a baby after the baby is born. This was a big issue, whenever Virginia and New York and they all came out and said, let's lay the baby on the side on a table and then have a discussion on whether the baby deserves care or not. So I think you still have to look at what it is that we need to get. The pro-life work is not done just because we have the trigger law. I mean, we're about to fight the biggest battle ever as we look at what has happened in other states whenever they try to put abortion in the Constitution as a right without any accountability or liability.
I don't think it's done, but I mean, when you're in the position you're in, that previous question 20 years from now protects the position you've worked hard to maintain, right?
It also allows us, should something happen with that trigger law, it allows us the ability to pull up and discuss and actually pass a law that will save babies and protect women. So the PQ
Do you think in this state you have a hard time passing pro-life laws? Because it sure don't seem like you have a hard time passing pro-life laws right now, even with the Senate.
That's because Missouri Right to Life's makeup obviously is our PAC. Our three PACs are very important in order for us to get legislators
this right
who
here
will pass
is
pro-life legislation.
If you're a state legislator, you're in the House. I've never met a person in the House that want to be governor. At some point, they decide they might make a brief trip to the state Senate before they become governor. The best way to become governor is to have this endorsement. I mean, I think that's just a base fact.
Well, I think it's important, like I said, I think it's important to the entire state for us to have somebody in that position who is going to run to the battle and actually produce results that will give us the protections that we need. And I'll just say across the board on every one of our conservative values that we have. For Missouri Right to Life, that's pro-life. So I think it's important for us to get somebody who is going to run to the battle. He's proven that in stepping out in his fight against these initiatives back in 2019. He has stepped out in his position on issues and been very vocal in the general public. So I think coalescing, once again, just basically taking the entire pro-life vote across the state and saying, hey, this is going to be a tough battle. Outside money is going to come in and try to take over our Constitution with these initiative petitions. And in so doing, they are going to be paying people, to collect signatures. They're going to be paying people, to get people to go to the polls. When people
It'll be a different battle, isn't it?
It is a different battle. It is post-Roe. And it is more proactive. We have to be more proactive in our fight to
protect. It's a little harder when you're playing defense, right?
Well, that's our intention, is not to have to play defense.
You ain't had to play defense in the state in a long time. You've been on the offense in my career,
And we want to stay there. We want to stay in a position that we're not defense, we're not offense. We're defending what we have.
So let me break this down from a political standpoint. You've been involved in a lot of races. Obviously, J. Ashcroft's the front runner. I don't think there's any rational way to go around that. A lot of it's name ID. A lot of it's the fact he's worked very hard and won a couple statewide races, but doesn't probably hurt the last name Ashcroft, right? In the quarter, had to feel a little bit better. I think he took a little time off fundraising. He came back and he put together $171,000. Kehoe rang the bell with a $500,000 quarter. Senator Eigel put together a pretty substantial quarter. He's got him sitting on $1 million. From the race standpoint, I can understand it. There's always an interesting piece of, Kehoe was in Senate leadership. And when you're in leadership, you have to make decisions that are tough. It is, I think you would say, to me, Bill Eigel was, I think, very loyal to Missouri Right to Life. And maybe he couldn't get everything he wanted to get done. Nobody can. It's kind of not made that way. But he was. Secretary Ashcroft has had a little bit of a cheap ticket to the dance, right? When you're at the Kirkpatrick building, you're not in the heat of that fight. It's a little easier position, right?
But he has come over to the legislature and presented testimony when a lot of former Secretary of States have not done that.
Sure.
So he has stepped up to the plate in multiple ways.
No question.
And is looking to be a spokesperson and put into public policies, pro-life and conservative values. And I think that's extremely important. I don't think it is, somebody who has been in the game for a long time and maybe doesn't have a shingle to hang their legislation, there's no
Mhm.
legislation hanging on their shingle or whatever. That's a little concerning. So, governor's race is an open race, and everybody is coming to the plate, as equal people. And we had to look at the past history of all of them. Tough calls are made by
Mhm.
leaders, and and we have been, and Missouri Right to Life's name is recognized as being a leader for pro-life work in the state of
Mhm.
Missouri. And so this is a tough call, but we actually can back up. Money in Missouri. Obviously, whenever you early endorse, you're looking at donors to basically come in and help us to win the battle.
So it's gotta help
So
him,
you're
right?
bringing
Yeah.
in, you're helping to bring in help with the donors, bring in support for the candidate as we move forward,
Mhm.
and that way, instead of fighting amongst each other as we go into a battle against the Democrats, who are very pro-abortion, and all this outside money coming in.
There's not really a battle over the governor's office. I mean, really. I mean, it's not like whoever which one of these three wins will most likely be governor. I'm not really battling Crystal Quaid necessarily. I mean, it's something. There's going to have to be a change in the state's trajectory significantly for her to win that race. Now, she could be competitive, but I mean, I think realistically, uh,
But it is, like I said, it's a little bit
pro-life
different.
voters are going to know who to vote for, right?
They are. And we'll make sure Missouri Right to Life, is going to actually, be the front lead in letting them know that.
So let's say this
Um,
race changes. Let's say, it has been, what's it? Governor Donnelly down in Lebanon was the last governor to come from the state senate. It is a different move that Bill Eigel is trying to make to go from the state senate to the governor's office. If he were to take a more traditional route into a different statewide office, I would assume Bill Eigel would be somebody you'd want to endorse or look very seriously at.
I would like to keep that conversation open with Senator Eigel as he looks at his future and what he's going to do in the state of Missouri. Like I said, he's been a fighter, but as I said, we also have to look at coalescing and getting our votes together, because we're not going to underestimate the ability of the outside monies to come in and do big influence on the voters of the state of Missouri. Because of these initiative petitions. So it's a little bit different election cycle. And obviously they're going to try to take out our U.S. Senate, take away one of our U.S. Senate seats too. So this is a different election cycle.
If
Like
I
I
was
said, it's
interviewing
one
a
of the
different
biggest
person,
ones.
I'd offer to make a bet on that, about how that race would turn out. As we look forward, though, I want to first of all thank our sponsors, United Fiber, some of the best folks you'll ever find up in St. Joseph, Maryville area. It's interesting. They're actually running. Normally the city folks come out in the rural area to run fiber. This United has had the co-op run such great fiber electric out there through Maryville and around St. Joseph. Now they're wanting them to come in town. Then the Courtyard by Marriott. If you're going to come to Jeff City, come to Courtyard by Marriott. Don't make a mistake. Go to the top hotel. It's where you want to be. And I have to thank a guy named Chip. He sent me this. He sent me this one a long time ago. This is an Ashcroft for Congress. And when somebody runs for election and loses, I'm always like, hey, you know what? That's not the end of the world. There's a guy named Ashcroft that ran for Congress once, didn't work out so great. He did okay in public service. I think John Ashcroft made an all right name for himself. People don't even forget that he ran for Congress down there in Springfield back in the day. He'd sent me this a while back. Then he sent me this one, Governor Dalton. He was a Boot Hill governor. I think he was after Donnelly, maybe. They had back-to-back governors, one from Kennett, one from Charleston, and Governor Hearn. So this goes back. Thank you, buddy. I sure appreciate this. This will go on our collection up there in the streaming studio as my son Gussie walks by and waves hi. Thank you very much. I appreciate these. I do keep all these. If it takes me a while to get to, it's because we do once a week. Let's jump into this. Give me in the endorsement process. You get somebody just got elected. They want to be a state. They want to be governor, but they think they'll run for state senate first. They've decided. What do they need to do to put them in their best position to when they run for the state senate to pick up this endorsement?
We try to meet with all the candidates when they announce. We will either drive or they come into Jefferson City to our state office, and we have a sit-down conversation.
So I'm hearing you need to come to Jeff City to the office.
And then have a conversation with the initial beginning of the introduction to the PAC. You'll probably interview with me, and then you'll be introduced to the PAC, and then you'll be given a survey, and we'll talk specifically about all the issues. And obviously now in a post-Roe world, those issues are changing.
Sure.
but they're still very relevant in our ability to protect babies and protect women.
You got to feel proud about the accomplishments you had. I mean, no matter if you could be the most pro-choice person in the world, if you put that your views aside for a second and you just look at the legislative accomplishments, even the political accomplishments, but I mean, you do that to have the legislative ones. You got to feel pride in what you've accomplished.
I feel humble to be
Yeah.
able to be part of the leadership of a group of great volunteers across the state. Our chapters and regions, do a lot of education work to change hearts and minds in the off-election cycle as well as the election cycle. But it's great to be a part of an organization that has really built 50 years worth of experience and reputation on an organization that people can trust. And we take that trust very seriously. We go out into the communities across the state and we have discussions. We talk with them. We talk with GOP leadership. We talk with, the movers and shakers of the state of Missouri. And it's humble to be able to work together. And it's been my honor to be able to do that and to be a part of this and to get and see Missouri in an overturning of Roe, which none of us thought we'd ever see in our lifetime. To be a part of it.
Were you surprised? But I want to get into the referendum here, but with the case was before. There's been cases before the Supreme Court before that could have went down that road. Did you think that would actually be the result of this case in front of this court?
We had high hopes based on the makeup of the U.S. Supreme Court, which, Missouri Right to Life is involved in writing recommendations for judges and things too. So we get involved in that part too. And we were able to write some recommendations on some of the judges that got appointed. So we had, rumors obviously were it could overturn Roe. At best, it would give us, an opportunity to have, more say-so in pro-life laws. So we were prayerfully and hopefully and then pleasantly surprised. I was at National Right to Life Convention.
I was going to ask you, where were you when this came down?
Yeah, it was all the pro-life groups from all across the state of Missouri were together.
What town were you in? Where were you at when you heard this happen?
We were in Atlanta, Georgia, on June 24th of 2022.
You was at the hotel of the convention? And
yes. Yeah,
awesome.
and it came down while we were in a workshop all together in an opening workshop.
I guess I can figure that would have been like Game 6 for me. Game 6 of the 2011 World Series where Freese hit the triple and homer. I would think that the place erupts, right?
They did.
That's awesome.
And you had a variety of ages, from the young who had not been around when Roe was decided, and then those that were.
I'll be honest with you, I never in my life conceptually thought that would happen. Never really thought it wouldn't. I just really didn't think that was a real. I thought you'd have courts that would restrict things, or I never really thought that would happen.
Well, and abortion was never a constitutional right. It was a decision that was made by a panel of judges. It
created some law, right?
Yeah. No, it really just created a court ruling.
But there was law.
Well, no, it was a court ruling that overruled did not present the truth whenever they had the case.
It could be a bad court ruling,
manipulated the woman that was in the case.
The judges have the authority of law behind them, and they can enforce their orders. I've even found people that very much believe that you have a right to an abortion. That felt like the way that case was decided and handled was a poor way to do that, just from a legal standpoint on Roe versus Wade. They thought if you were going to make this ruling, you could get there. The way they got there was poorly done and set up pitfalls that really nobody thought would ever happen. But let me move to this. Right now, you have races in this state. Where I'm from in the Boot Heel, solidly pro-life. If you're my mama, if you're not pro-life, she doesn't really want to hear the next thing. You may have some wonderful ideas that would revitalize Western Butler County. She doesn't really care if you're not pro-life. And I think that's probably a predominant sentiment around Southern Missouri, Central Missouri, Cali and Blues. You do have a demographic of voter that I think generally is pro-life, but maybe not as pro-life as some of the current laws are. And I guess the question I would have is, you've got folks coming in, there's a bunch of different petitions out there. I think you could figure there's going to be a petition on the ballot that would go to weaken the law that is in place now.
But I think these people who have put these initiatives together, whether you're the ACLU and you
Mhm.
have somebody with a name that you put on them to move them forward, have gone too far.
See, if
You are
a
asking,
savvy Democrat that sits in that chair will tell me, "Oh, I respect the pro-life views of the state," because I've always felt like I've seen polls, right? You'll get a poll that comes from NARAL or somebody. It'll say 55% of people are pro-choice, and I'll see a poll from Missouri Right to Life or an affiliate group that say, "Oh, 55% of people are pro-life, 60, whatever it is." I've always kind of felt like on any given day, how you ask a question, you get a small majority of people to say they're pro-life or pro-choice. However, the intensity has always been 100 to 1 on the pro-life cause. Do you worry that the bill you passed? I mean, it's one of these things you get into where it's something moral, and people truly have an honest belief that they're morally doing something right. It's hard to say, well, was this too far? But do you worry that maybe the law you passed was more aggressive than the average person of the state is comfortable with?
no, and we have proof that it wasn't. I mean, if you look at the other states that were dealing with these abortion initiatives, pretty much like what we've got and what we're going to deal with here, and they lost after Dobbs. But we went into an August primary in 2022 after the Dobbs decision, knowing full well what our law was, and we took out one of our state senators that we didn't necessarily agree with, and told the truth in his district about what he stood for, and the people decided. And we also elected several conservative new senators. We didn't lose our supermajorities. We did not decrease our numbers in the Senate or the House. And if the people were unhappy with the law, you would have seen that. In November of 2022, we took that other statewide seat with Scott Fitzpatrick moving into the auditor's seat, and then the governor appointing Vivek. So the people of Missouri stood strong even after Dobbs when these other states were losing.
That's a good litmus test?
I do, because it really shows the truth about Missouri pro-life people, that we're not going to be deceived.
There's some state house districts that in the suburbs, the Northland of Kansas City, Western St. Louis County, where abortion used to be something everybody talked about a lot, that obviously this state's going to elect a pro-life governor and probably a pro-life slate of statewide candidates. Do you worry that there's some folks not as on board as, do you worry you're going to lose? I think you're going to lose if anybody cares who the state treasurer is, I think you're going to lose the seat, right? But do you worry you're going to lose some state rep seats? Do you worry that people don't talk about it as aggressively? Because frankly, maybe the intensity when you win. Remember, Matt Blunt's coming for his picture hanging Friday. I'm guessing this is what old people say about stuff. So back when Matt was there, med mal was a big deal, medical malpractice laws. You couldn't shot a BB gun through the rotunda and not hit two white coats, right? They were everywhere. Then they passed their law, and now you can't find a doctor to come up there half the time, right? The doctor of the day is now the doctor of the week or something. Do you worry that same intensity happens here?
I don't, because I trust the people of Missouri. That law that we have in place and the laws that we've had in place all these years are working to protect women from the deceptions of the abortion industry. We're giving them alternatives to abortion. We're giving them show me healthy babies. We're the most pro-life state in the United States. And we're taking a lead on this. I don't think we're going to lose seats. You get a Missouri Right to Life endorsement. We're going to fight to make sure that you win.
So
the truth, and let me say, these initiative petitions go too far from the perspective.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. They say you go too far. I wonder, can they fight the urge? Because I mean, obviously, the more moderate approach they take, the harder your job is to beat it, right? I mean, just from common sense. Are you counting on them to go too far and then you kind of exploit their overreach?
I know we're going to tell the truth about what their petitions do. and their petitions basically take away having a parental
But I mean, you're gonna, no matter what
involvement
they
in
come
what
up with,
they're
you're gonna want
doing.
that to go down, right?
Well, because we have good
Yeah.
laws in place,
I mean, my point
and they
is,
haven't hurt
you
anybody in the
might
process.
not be the most unbiased arbiter of the pro-choice initiative petition.
No, but I know the truth about what is happening, and I know the people of Missouri. I mean, we have
Yeah.
worked so hard over all these
But
years.
the strategy is going to
and-
be whatever they come up with. It's probably going to be too extreme with the campaign slogan, and then the next piece of that's going to be, if you the further the facts are, is going to help. Obviously, no matter what case you're making, the more facts you have to back it up with. The thought is they think. I mean, they're very confident.
We are too.
I've interviewed them.
Yeah.
It's a confident group of people, and I get the sense that confidence may lead to some overreach. It's kind of if I'm them, I watch them, and they've, of course, you've been beating them annually on something for a long time, since I didn't have gray hair on my sideburns. I wonder if they can withstand feeling a little bit of gusto, and I get the sense that they probably can't, and they may go a little too far.
Well, obviously they've gone too far. They usually do.
Do you
but
think
whenever
this
you
law
have,
is where
you
the
have,
average Missourian is on abortion right now?
I think what we have in statute is where Missourians are right now, which is protection of the unborn
The average
child.
primary voter or the average Missourian?
The average primary voter as far as pro-life goes. But then I think you've got the average Missourian also that is going to look at whenever they want to do abortions and not have a license, when they want to have no lawsuits that can be filed against anybody who harms them during the process of abortion. When you look at the issues that they're talking about, you're talking about a step too far. That moderate middle people are not going to want unlicensed people doing abortions. They're not going to want to take away the right of parental rights to have a voice in what happens to their child. You're not going to have people talking about, and I'll just bring it up. We're not going to support rape and incest because when you let me talk. When you do rape and incest exception in this kind of an initiative petition situation, you allow no accountability for the rapist or the molester of that child. And we're not going to go down that path. We are going to protect the women who are in difficult situations. You've got the human trafficking issue that is coming, that is huge all across our nation. A lot of that because of the immigration issue, but you've got human trafficking going on. And what's the result of human trafficking? The result of human trafficking is either have an abortion or birth that baby and take that baby into a human trafficking situation. So these initiative petitions would do all of that. And so when you start talking about the truth of what these initiatives do, then those other Missourians who may not be 100% pro-life, but they are not going to support the issues of what I just talked about.
What views can you have and still be pro-life? I mean, I think most Missourians, I think most people I know can't really fathom an abortion. That's not something they could really get in their minds. It was never something they seriously considered. They were fortunate not to be in a spot to need to consider that, or whatever you have, or they haven't been in that spot in so many decades in their life that it's hard to remember what frame of mind they would have been in. It's not something they a lot of times people have an abortion, they don't talk about it. It's not dinner conversation for most people. So they may not know of anybody. It was like when I grew up in the Bootle, I didn't know anybody who was gay. Of course, I knew people that were gay, but nobody said they were gay, so I didn't know. And I think abortion could be, it's a highly personal thing. And the rape and incest part, if there was someone savvy enough to just put that on the ballot, that's a sticky thing to try to knock down, isn't it? I mean, if somebody was savvy to just do that and chip away, as you've chipped away legislatively for years, that'd be tough to win, wouldn't it?
We're not going to support anything that would.
I mean, that's a tough campaign, right?
We're not going to support anything that would open up the ability for anybody to abuse women. So that,
I mean, from a political
in any
perspective,
of those,
that's a tougher campaign to fight than one that gets into parental rights and things where I think you could almost tell folks an abortion story from either side, and you'd have 20% of Missourians that could agree with you after they heard the extreme cases on both sides.
But when you're passing a law that has no accountability, or you're passing an initiative that would go into the Missouri Constitution, and there's no accountability and no liability to anyone who does abortion, or anyone for any reason, or through human trafficking, there's no accountability. Then I think that Missourians have a problem with that.
When do you want this on the ballot? Ultimately, I guess the governor can do a few things to set August or November. Do you want this on in August?
Well, we want the legislature to pass IP reform. We want to either keep the 50.01 and add to that, kind of like our.
I get my phone out here and check how much time. I promised you a certain amount of time. I don't want to go over everything, but we used to sit up there and talk, and you've got this. You come with this county thing, and I couldn't take my boots off, so I couldn't follow it closely enough with the Matthews doing. What would be wrong with just saying everybody in Southeast Missouri and North Missouri have to sign the petition, and that'd be good? That would add $1 million probably. Because I mean, look, our friends in Chesterfield and Lee Summit, they drive these little small cars, and they drink this weird syrups out of straws. They're tiny, petite, kind of meek people, and they're real easy to lead around. You go to Southeast Missouri, and you stand out in front of old Jim Hogg's is closed. You stand out in front of the Cottage Inn in Southeast Missouri, and you have a paper from the government want my address? Psh, no way. Wouldn't it be much better as a first step? Now, I'm from Missouri, so I like to wade into things. To just say, you know what, go up to Grant City and try to get my buddy Ben Appleknap to sign a petition, because he ain't going to want to sign something. The suburb people sign anything. But will folks in Southeast Missouri? I don't think they will.
Yeah, it's amazing to me how many people will just sign something with somebody that they don't know.
Well, we already go to Dexter sometimes, because ain't nobody in Dexter looking to sign stuff.
So there are two kinds of IP reform. There is the IP reform that addresses the signature gathering. And then there is the IP, and we're past being able to do that as far as having an effect of that in the 2024 election cycle. Because once the petitioner gatherers get the opportunity to sign the petition, then we can't change the law.
Like the charter school people finally back down, and they're willing to let it go to a certain form of it, I guess. It just feels like, in my gut, it should be harder to change the Constitution. A statute, it kind of feels like the current system probably is tough enough to change a statute. And if the legislature wants to, they'll just go change it again, and they have in the past. The constitutional part, in my gut, just kind of feels like it ought to be tougher.
And that's the second part of the IP reform that we're working on, and that we worked on last session, and it didn't go anywhere because some lobbyist groups wanted a lower percentage, and they wanted just a percentage. We want the percentage, 50.01. If they want to go to 53 or 54, that's great. But it has to also include the second prong that would say that not only do you get 50.01%, but you've got to get 50.01% in 5 out of the 8 congressional districts, because that gives everybody across the state of Missouri the opportunity to have a voice in when our Missouri Constitution is changed. We're all going to have to live by it, so we all should have the ability to have a voice in that. So, and if you look at the U.S. Constitution and how it's changed, it's got 2 prongs. It's got a majority, and then it's got, the 2/3, or I have to look at the.
It just feels like it is. It feels like the statutory part feels about tough enough, right? It just sort of feels like the Constitution part. It wouldn't hurt much to be a little tougher. You know what I mean? And I get what you're saying. The math on that can make my eyes swim just a little bit, but I do see your point.
Well, and that needs to be on the August 2024 ballot. If we're going to affect the November 2024 with the petitions, we need the how Missouri's Constitution could be changed.
But I mean, is that realistic at this point? I mean, aren't you having to prepare right now in your office to fight this fight under the current rules?
We are, but we also want to fight it.
Sure, you want the best battlefield you can have, just like that's right. Just like a pro-choice person would. There's nothing wrong with that, but But I think it just realistically, to go through all the court fight and whatever's going to fall out from it, it kind of feels like to me you got to prepare to fight this referendum fight under the current rules.
We're doing both.
Yeah,
we're working to get IP changed on protecting our Constitution. Whether you're protecting the pro-life laws or whether you're just protecting the Constitution.
You're talking about getting everybody on board, right? And that's kind of part of getting organized now behind Jay Ashcroft and all that. you mentioned a candidate you couldn't support because he had supported some of the stem cell stuff, I guess, back in the day, some of the folks. Well, it's always been interesting to me. The same folks that did the stem cell stuff are behind the charter school stuff, but don't really, they're also the main folks that train abortion doctors. But I don't hear you holding that against another candidate. What's the difference?
We are looking at the initiative petitions and coalescing everybody behind a candidate to move forward.
But
So that
essentially, you've
we
got
as
some
a,
very wealthy people in St. Louis that are all probably big donors to one private school that are really your problem. And they're really the problem of football players and cheerleaders. They're going to start playing this August. And they're the people that they're pushing the stem cell stuff. And look, they think they're doing the right thing. But most Missourians probably like, that's an odd bedfellows to sit with. And how do you pick, okay, we're going to hold this vote against somebody for being with that crowd, but not this vote?
you're going to have to show me the connection with the pro-life issue with that.
We'll get in the truck and go to
So-
KIPP charter schools and we'll see whose name's on the wall. Bet it's the same folks at the transgender center, bet it's the same folks as stem cells.
It's not, it is
It
not at
rhymes
the
with
top of the
schmosh
battle.
schmoo.
It is not at the top of the battle in this fight that we're doing and what we're looking at. And who's ever at the top in the governor's office is going to have some say-so in some of that.
And I think Mike
So-
Moon put it together better than I could have. Because I was like, now it's an odd group of people here that they're against these people on everything except this. And Mike Moon said it better than I could. He said, can you say campaign contributions? And I was like, well, I'm always slow to just go there. But when all else logic fails, sometimes you end up there, right? I mean, I can't hear any other good thing.
We follow campaign contributions. So
Do
yeah,
you?
we do.
It'll be interesting to see the secretary's campaign contributions. If he takes some from that crew, I'm gonna have you back on and ask you about it and see if you scolded him. What was it like to call him? He had to feel good. When you call him on the phone and say, we're gonna endorse you, he had to be happy.
Well, he was kind of like I am as far as leading Missouri Right to Life, in that he was humbly grateful, and he's just a real person that you can talk to, and I think he and Katie will be great leaders for our state.
Yeah, Katie's
as
the
a
politician there,
family.
probably in reality, right?
She's a wonderful person.
I mean,
So-
she's the one that walk into the room and just turn you around. And I think the people I know that are successful in politics, many of them have a common denominator, and it's a wife like that.
She will be a great first lady. He will be a great governor.
You and I have sat there all the time and watched a lot of people come through there. I've kind of seen, it's almost like Goldilocks, right? I've seen some spouses that are really into it. And I'm like, that may be a little too hot. Then I've seen some spouses that you never see up there when you meet them. They're just like, this is stupid. Why are you doing this? I'm like, that's a little too cold. But to have a certain person that can keep their perspective in a business where, flattery is part of it. And you work in a big dome building and there's some ego to it. You almost need that supportive partner that's kind of like gold, just right. And that's always what she kind of has, that karma of being just right, of the kind of spouse that probably helps you keep grounded, but is committed to what you're trying to do. You know what I mean? I think Jamie Schmidt is one that's very committed to what Eric does, but also says, well, okay, that's fine with your little speech, but go mow the yard now, right? And that's there's a fine line in there that people joke about politicians, but I mean, it's a sacrifice. It's a tough life.
It is. And, people I'm sure I know Jay and Katie have prayed about getting into the race. And I think it is something that they feel strongly about and committing their family to. When
he could be a U.S. Senator right now. I mean, I think there would not have been I don't think there would have been a serious primary against him. I think all the people that decide that sort of thing had aligned behind, and he could have been a U.S. Senator if he would have said yes. And he said no. And now that's an interesting dynamic that I think speaks well of him, but it is an interesting dynamic. And I think the two of them, I asked him, and it's like with the campaign contribution thing. I'm like, well, why would you do how do you benefit Pineville by sticking it to your school? And it's like, well, okay, maybe that is the reason. Maybe you get a contribution. They said they prayed about it. And I don't know what else it could have been, because everybody had lined up and said, you're the guy. And he said, I'm not the guy. And so in that situation, I kind of think maybe it was prayer.
Perhaps. I know that I know that they are a praying family.
Yeah.
So so I think
You hear that from
I
politicians
think
a lot, and you're like, oh, you want some more time with your
Well,
family? Yeah, sure you do.
I'm not saying
But
that
I actually
others
believe
aren't,
that. Yeah.
but I know that they are.
Some people say it more
And that
credibly
is,
than others.
yeah.
Right. I mean, when
Well,
you're around these folks, you kind of, I believe that. And I
yeah.
sometimes go like, oh, here we go. But
Well,
when he says it, I believe it.
yeah, I do too. Politics is very difficult. But when you look at what we're after and keeping Missouri on track with a state, that is pro-life, and we're looking at policies that are going to basically promote family life, promote life in from the beginning of conception, and not look at human cloning or anything like that. I think that's the state that Missourians want. We don't want, we don't want to bring businesses in that are going to, create and do human cloning. We want to be a state that is protecting, the way creation was meant to be from the beginning, and not creating it in an artificial way. So I think, from the perspective of that, a single endorsement of Jay for governor, I think is Missourians, we need to get behind one candidate, not beat each other up, and move forward. And,
now,
and basically,
after what you just said, my phone's going to blow up with people who would say that you have beat a few folks up who I think most people consider pro-life. I know that I consider many state senators pro-life who you've beat up pretty good. Now, you're encouraging folks not to beat each other up in the governor's race, but you've thrown a few elbows.
But as we've looked at voting records, public comments, positions, on public policy, I think we can back up anything that we've done. I know we can.
Well, I think any politician could be attacked, and it could be somewhat backed up, right? I mean, Jay Ashcroft could be attacked, and you could back that up with some stream of logic. It would probably be up to the ear of the listener to whether it was good or not. But I mean, you're saying don't throw an elbow. Well,
but our
you tossed a few elbows.
Our attacks should be focused on where they need to be, which is on the Biden administration that's trying to push pro-abortion policies on us every single day, and a Democrat Party in the state of Missouri that will not allow a Democrat to be pro-life and get any kind of situation or position out of that. So I think that we need to focus on
Roy
who our
Rowland become
enemy
mayor of
is.
Independence, but I watched Roy Rowland take a lot of grief in the legislature for voting pro-life. And I'm like, I remember a state that had a Democrat majority of a Bill Kennan and Jeffco who was pro-life, who had a
Ben
Victor
Harris,
Callahan, and
Bill Lukemeyer,
Lukenhouse,
and then Ted House. Those were some big
and they represent their
pro-life
constituents.
Democrats.
The fact is, their constituents are pro-life,
and they led the way on the ban on partial birth abortion in 1999 when Missouri led the way on that.
Jerry Howard found that his constituents were very pro-life, and he was not, and he was not reelected.
This is a different day,
yeah.
And the Democrat Party is not what it used to be. And they're openly running pro-abortion now.
And here's the thing, I was raised a certain way. I think most of the folks in the state, in outstate Missouri, are raised a certain way. But, they believe they're right. It's not a sinister plot to make money off something. I think they generally think they're right. And so I guess the way I come to this is, let's pretend, God, Lord, I'm gonna have to get in a different mental space. I need a drink of my United Fiber Diet Coke Yeti. Pretend I live in Chesterfield. God, good Lord. Let's say the Lord has cursed me and I have to live in Chesterfield. And I've generally always voted Republican, and I'm generally pro-life, but this is pretty pro-life now. And this thing comes on the ballot, and let's say they do go with a moderate one. Give me the argument against that.
On a Democrat moderate?
On your referendum that's on the ballot, you're going to make the case against it. Give me the short case. I happen to run into you. You're in a parade, and you're at a festival, and I generally vote Republican. I'm pro-life. I don't want a bunch of abortions, but maybe this law is a little bit out there for me. I have a wife, a sister, a mother, and they're all a little bit like, that's a little much. What do you say to me?
Our laws haven't hurt women. They have helped women. And we're just trying to maintain protection for the unborn baby and protection for the woman. We're trying to make sure that abortion on demand does not come to our state and does not go into our Constitution. We're trying to protect the women who are being misled by the abortion industry, and we're going to continue to do that. We're compassionate to women. We've shown that through our alternatives to abortion, support of the alternatives to abortion funding, the Show Me Healthy Babies, any helps that they need. We're a compassionate state that reaches out, and our pregnancy resource centers are great. And so we're going to work to make sure that women have anything they need to choose life for their baby and help support them and their family.
Just so we're clear, even in that scenario, I'm not driving one of those go-karts or drinking that awful syrup out of a straw. I just happen to be cursed to live there for a minute in probably like an RV so I can drive away as quickly as possible. But I like it. I like it. Susan, thank you so much for coming and joining us. Congratulations on the endorsement. I know that that's a big deal to come out early behind somebody. And we hope as the campaign unfolds, you'll come back and talk with us here, either on the TV show or here in the studio, or maybe we can just drink tea, or we can sit up there and I sneak a Diet Coke in up there. You probably follow the rules better than I do. I'm not much of a rule follower.
Well, great studio, Scott. You did a great job. Thank you so much.
Well, the credit goes to Billy. I appreciate your time, and we'll see you Sunday. We have a friend of yours on the show, Andrew Koenig's on This Week in Missouri Politics. He just like the most, like, you really can't ask him a smart aleck question because he's just a good dude. And he kind of comes got that karma of being a good guy. Yeah. You don't really come off and like even you want to respect him because that's how he comes off. Then we're going to have somebody from all three gubernatorial campaigns on, and hopefully they'll all say their piece and fight. It'll be interesting to watch.
It will be. Yep.
Thank you so much. We will see you.